Hi everybody, Minus here from wowplus.org, and today I wanted to put a tutorial video together for Vuhdo. There's not a lot of add-ons that are super hard that will feature on this site, but Vuhdo is probably one of the more complicated ones when you really want to dig into the options. So this will be a multi-series video, and we're just going to start with this first video being the basics and kind of go from there. So once you open Vuhdo, the default Vuhdo window will open up, which is right over here. You'll see the Vuhdo buff watch and tanks, NPCs, and the group. What I'm going to do is just show you how I typically start setting this up, and I'll show you through some of the settings, and then I'll try to break the settings down by video so you can actually go and access what you're looking for. So to begin with, the best way to bring up Vuhdo is / VD options. So VD OPT with a space in between. And that's going to bring up for the panels here. So the very first thing I want to do is get this into something that's a little bit more familiar to a lot of people, get it a little bit cleaner. And there's actually a built-in profile. You're going to see a ton of profiles here, but there's actually a built-in profile that you can go to called Vuhdo-esque. And when you pick Vuhdo-esque and apply it, it's going to go ahead and change this a little bit to a little cleaner. And I'll show you what that means in a second. Once you hit OK, you always want to hit copy so that you don't overwrite it. And now you'll have your own profile for Vuhdo. Next, open up Vuhdo again. And now you can start to actually edit everything. And the first thing we want to do is I'm going to get rid of excess windows like main tanks, private tanks. I'm going to get rid of these and really just focus on building a singular mechanism here for tracking your group or your raid. So to do that, I'm going to go into Move, and you're going to see all these different things open up. Panel 1 right here is our group that we're working on, so we don't really want to touch that. Panel 2 is our main takes panel. I'm going to actually just get rid of it altogether by clicking X twice. Same thing. Panel 4 and pets. Now obviously if you have use for those or you want to keep them, that's absolutely fine. The last thing I want to do is get rid of a buff watch. So if I go into buffs, I'm sorry, it's under... And by the way, I will not be going from a script here, so expect a couple errors. But go ahead and you go into Buffs General and just disable Buff Watch. You won't have to worry about that. I like using a different add-on altogether for that. So now we have a pretty simple group mechanism here, and I want to show you how to start building that. So I'm going to keep it up here just so it's a little bit easier to see. So what I'm going to do is, again, Vuhdo options, so VD, OPT, and I'm going to bring it up, and we're going to start looking at the general setup. Now, it's difficult to set one of these up without having a whole group, and to do that, they allow you to put it into test mode. So this is a little confusing as well, but if you go ahead to move, let's just say we want a panel of 30, hit test once, and then just go back to general. You might not even need to hit that. And this is going to show a breakdown here. So group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5. Now, there's a couple different ways to do this, and again, the way I'm doing it is not the perfect way. It's just what I'm familiar with and what I will typically do as a healer or even on DPS or tank classes to kind of keep sight of the group. So in general, once you click on that, there are some different things you can do here. But where we're actually probably going to start is, let's go with panels. And panels is going to be where you're going to do most of the work with anything that physical changes. So right now they're grouped. So that's why you see group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5, group 6. I actually don't do it that way. I do it loose. And what I do is I sort it by ID type. So if you go here, you can actually do tank, healer, and then damage, which means that no matter how the groups are set up, I'm actually going to be able to see the tank first, or tanks, and healers, and then the damage. To me, that works really well. You'll see that even with the test here, it put it like that for us for the most part. A little bit of errors here and there. Now, the other thing I really like to do is you first. So if you click you first, that would typically put you at the top of the left group. Again, with this trial, we're not in there, so that's kind of how that would look. So having you first plus tank, healer, direct damage in a loose group setting will make it so that you'll always have yourself right here, and then you'll have your tanks, and then you'll have healers, followed by all the DPS. To me, this makes it a lot easier to use. This anchor point is also important. If you didn't have a group, or you were adding people into your group, this will grow. With the anchor point being up in the top left-hand corner like it is here, you'll actually start at this, and then the group will grow this way. So depending on how you place your starting Vuhdo, if you put it underneath here, the best way I've found to do it is to anchor it from the middle, so that when all the groups are done, this is where you will have your hero bar. So it's just something, again, that I like to do. Now, the other thing that people are going to want to adjust is sizing. So when you go into sizing here, the main ones you're going to use is the bar width and the bar height. And watch, it'll take a second to adjust if you're dragging. So you can see the height adjust of the individual bars. So you can kind of set that to how you want it to be. If you know what your group size is going to be, typically, if it's going to be 20, if it's going to be 25, you can really change this to fit your group. I will typically build something that's about 30 so that I know if I get to a full 30 group that it won't overrun my interface. Bar width on the side here, you can make the bars longer, shorter. The bars themselves, you can change through a bunch of different textures here if it's something you want to do. You can have it gradient like it is now. You can go into class colors that'll highlight them as per class. You can put them into solid, just like that. I'll typically keep it gradient because I do like to see red and orange bars as health is going down. So green bars, they're healthy. Red, they're hurting. Colored bars are debuffs. Okay. A lot of people do like class colors. I will typically stick with bar colors. Headers, if you have a headers for the groups, you can turn those on or off. We've already adjusted it to loose settings so they won't be there. You can set up targets. I'm not going to get into that in these videos. It's a little bit more in depth if you want to have targets. Hot icons are very important. So hot icons is specifically, let's say for right now, I have a holy priest. And if I were to put prayer of mending on myself, you would get to see it. Now the default way this is set up is a little shaky in my opinion. It'll put your buffs around like this and it'll do it with triangles. It's really awkward. I don't know why they set it up that way. What I like to do is turn it to the inside of the bar. I like to then change it to the actual icons of the spells. So what I'm going to do to play around with this a little bit so that you can see it in action is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn test off. So we're going to go back into move, put it to current, and then we're going to go back into panels. So you'll see that it's just me here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go into here, and this will actually list different abilities that we'll already have, which is kind of nice. So what we're looking for is Prayer of Mending. So Prayer of Mending will now be the first slot, which will start right inside the bar to the left. The second one will be Renew. So for a Holy Priest, there's not a whole lot more I need than those two on a normal basis. We can do Guardian Spirit, but we'll just keep it with these two for now. So we don't have our spells set up yet, so let's go ahead and do a little quick setup of that. If I'm moving too fast, just jump back. That's not a problem. I'm trying to cover a lot in this first opening video. Trying to keep the videos as short as possible. Vuhdo, again, can get pretty in-depth. So now we're going to do what's most important to a healer. Now, keep something in mind. When we go into spells, this is also really important for DPS and tanks. For DPS and tanks, you may not have abilities that you need while clicking on stuff, but you can eliminate your party frames altogether by having your target, assist, and menu buttons set up. So right now it's set up, if I click this, left click, I target the character that I'm using, okay? Now, the assist button I don't find to be very helpful. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, and I'm going to go ahead and name it Menu. When I name it Menu, if I right-click it, it'll bring up a menu for Vuhdo options. So if that's something you want to be able to do, there it is. Super, not something that you're going to want to do all the time. Promote to Raid Leader, promote to Master Looter, stuff like that. So actually the best one here is drop down. And that's a command that's built in. So now when I right-click it, I get the same thing as if I was going to right-click somebody that I'm targeted. So that's really nice. If you want to mark somebody, any of that kind of stuff, it's pretty easy to do. Simple like that. So for a tank, you'll want target and drop down to be the main things you put on here. And then you can actually hotkey things like intercept if you're a warrior. You can do a few different things here that isn't so bad. Pretty kind of cool to do. But we do have a healer here. This is a priest that I picked to show this video on. So we're going to go ahead and start setting up buttons. So let's go ahead and open up our menu here so I don't mistype anything or assume anything wrong. So Flash Heal and Heal are two of your main spells you're going to use. Flash Heal and Heal. So if we make our left button flash heal, and we make our right button heal, sorry. Now with it like that, if I left click, I'm gonna heal. I'll move this a little bit away from my quartz, and I'll disable that bar in a second. And if I right click, I'm going to heal. It's pretty easy. So I have a more complicated mouse, so my middle button is not set to be a middle button. So the rest of these end up not helping me. And you can experiment with these depending on how your mouse is set up. If they're set up to be generic button 4, 5, 6, 7, you can actually set your mouse up that way. To get around that, if you have a more complicated mouse where you've actually set hotkeys or made them to work with keys like mine, you can go into what's called keys local. And you can actually add these, and it's going to be separate for every character. If you hit add, you'll be able to pick something. So let's go ahead and pick renew. And I'm going to set that to my middle mouse button, which is actually apostrophe. I'm going to add another one here and set it to the buttons on the side. This can be prayer mending. Now, I'm not going to set up every single button because you guys will get the gist of it by doing a couple of these, but I wanted to set these up to show you how the buffs will work on the bar. So if I go ahead and hit OK, it's going to automatically save it anytime you close. So now if I put renew on myself, you can see it's pretty big, but that's my second in. If I put prayer mending on myself, you'll see that that will sit there like that. Now the reason this has triangles on it is because that's how it's counting the stacks of the buff. I'm not a big fan of that. I'd like to just see the number. So if we go into panels, hot icons, you can just put text for stacks, and now it can show that I have 5. But as you can see here, especially if I put this back up, these are pretty big and they're going to cover a lot of the bar. So you can actually adjust right here to make them smaller so that it works a little bit better for you. Now you can see if I put prayer mending on, you'll see the time left and you'll see the stacks there. So you can set that up across any class just by putting them in order, and you can have them in any order you'd like. You can also adjust the text on the characters here. You can change the text size, make it a little bit smaller. You can change the positioning or the outline, or you do a bunch of different stuff here. You can see you have the percent, the 100%, the name. You can show flags. You can show a bunch of different things here. Typically, I will put the dead center like that. These are your text positions. It'll start here. I actually like it in the center, and I don't want it to be too deep in so that my icons aren't messing stuff up and I can see the health line better. So that's a pretty basic video. There is more that you can do on here. You can set one of your spells to be a dispel, so when you see the bar light up in color, you know you're able to dispel that. It's actually not too complicated to do that. So first video, I don't know how many videos I'm going to make, but this first video should get you started with Vuhdo. Really what you're going to want to change is your panel functions, your spells, and your general. And you have different things over here. You don't even have to get into a lot of these, to be honest with you. Really just going to be your spells, your panels. So hopefully that helps a little bit. That'll show you how to get started with this and make it usable. Like I said, it'll replace your party frames. It will replace any need for anything like a heal bot. It'll be kind of all built in, and you can use it whether you're a tank, a healer, or DPS. Obviously a healer is going to get the most out of it, but it's a good way to see when a character is down or somebody's not close to you. They won't light up. It's just a really good tool, and it's very functional, and what I showed you is just the surface of all the different things you're able to actually set up. But that'll get you started. Thanks guys, and we'll get more videos up as needed.